Happy Tuesday, everybody. My name is Andy Elliott. I'm a realtor here in Williamson County, Tennessee, where it's currently raining. And I'm with my best bud, Rodney Wilds, who is a loan officer with First Bank, also in Williamson County. And we are here to just banter back and forth. And our best buddy here is also tucked away in our comments box. Hi, Angie. Hi, Rodney.
How's it going?
You know, there's a lot going on right now. There's a lot going on.
You
The
talking
market
about
seems to be popping.
World War III? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, there's that too. You know, I was being a little more local. I was thinking about I've got a number of buyers that are actively making calls and stuff, and that always tells you. And they always doesn't matter how many buyers you have. If you've got one, two, six, or eight, when one starts to kind of popcorn and make, crackle and sizzle, almost all of them do at the same time, at least this time of year. There's this unknown signal. If it's time to get busy, start making calls and seeing houses. So it's good.
Good. Yeah,
It's
it's
good.
awesome.
How's the lending business? We haven't talked about this in the longest time. Any updates on rates or anything? Any news?
Well, we're kind of expecting rates to stay in the high sixes for a few more months, and then maybe see some lift from, the government may reduce some their prime rate, which in turns should help us out. And just the other market factors, maybe China deal getting better. I think end of the year they're projecting it might get a little bit better, but definitely not like it was at the end of last year. Where they projected 2025 was going to be. We could see sub 6% or something, but they're
Yeah.
still projecting high sixes for the end of this year.
It seems to be that confusion, and I don't whatever that is, okay, I'll just call it hope. The hope that people were having, once it gets to the fives again,
Yeah.
people it seems to have quashed their dreams a little bit on that. So now we're more realistic, which is fine. And it seems to me, if we were taking temperature of stuff that's been going on, other than clearly the Middle East is a problem, but with tariffs and all the commotion that's been going on, that seems to have settled down just a little bit for a while, and I'm a big proponent of, if things are calm, people get happy, and when they're happy, they start buying again. How's applications looking
I you
as an
know I
industry?
haven't I haven't looked globally, but we since we had school let out and graduation and all that, and typically for us we run into a couple of weeks of the doldrums here. So I think that's had a big effect on us in this area, is that school's out, people are vacationing, getting colleges ready, that sort of thing. So it's been a little down for us locally, but I attribute it. I can count on this time of year better than most as far as any kind of seasonal slowdowns.
Right. I was reading the other day. It was the other day about refis seem to be coming back. Is there truth to that?
I haven't seen much. Our group's seen some, but it hasn't seen much. I mean, if the ones that we're doing right now, I see mostly taking some cash out, paying off some debt, or doing something to the house, something like that. Not they're just not refinancing to get a better rate right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because where would to what,
Yeah,
I'm gonna.
coming from what there's really not been a time that it's lower now than it had, than it was. It's not lower enough, if there's some over 7%, it's still not too far under
Yeah.
six. So underside.
And when we talk about the general, I have to remind myself of this, and I mean this in the best way possible. Um, that we live, Williamson County, where we live, really is, I think it's a special place. I'm really happy here, but it's a great place to live. And financially, it seems to be pretty healthy here despite everything that's going on. And so when we're talking about, when I read things about lots of refis and stuff, I don't know that that's necessarily a part of what we're experiencing on a national scale. Maybe so, but Williamson County seems to be pretty healthy, and it even up the street in Nashville, up the street, it's different than we are here in Williamson County. So good, bad, or indifferent. I have to remember, I think that we're in a special place, and it is partly because I live here, but it's also, it's one of the wealthiest counties in the nation. It's probably in the top 10 or 15, and so that puts you in pretty good condition, I'd say, on that.
We're not like Beverly Hills though. 25 million an acre, so we're still
yeah.
We're still considered a bargain for some places.
I mean, remember, I love it, but we are in Tennessee, so
Yeah.
But it's a nice place to live anyway. So the first article that I wanted to touch base on, and the question isn't the reason for the warm up here is it a smart time to buy a home right now? And this is this is produced by CNBC, which they seem to be pretty level-headed about stuff. There's no, we don't have our crash buddy, taking notes from him today. So that's good. I'm sure wherever he is, it's crashing, so the way that, here we go, 2 pips and a share, is that right? Yep. So for potential home buyers, the U.S. housing market is hard to read right now. Affordability remains an obstacle with elevated mortgage rates and median home price of $442. The median home prices, I see that bouncing all over the place. I see 416, 462. I don't know where they get their numbers, but it's not consistent. This is from Redfin. So, however, inventory is rising in many markets, especially in the South. I am telling you that inventory is definitely rising here, giving buyers more leverage to negotiate prices. Redfin expects, again, I'm say this every single time, Redfin is my competition, but I respect them a lot as a company. They have great resources for data. They do I think, a really good job on that. They expect home prices to decline 1% year over year by the end of 2025, a forecast that aligns with Zillow's projected 1.4% drop. I didn't realize that till I read this article. So those two, the big boys, are expecting prices to drop. And if you're in the market, here's what I see on this kind of thing. If you're active in buyers, and we were just talking about that, we've got buyers that are starting to percolate. They're looking at houses, and we're going to do showings and stuff like that. What's nice about this particular market, and when we have a decline of just 1% year over year, for sellers, that's not great. If you're looking to make a fortune by the end of the summer, according to those numbers, that's not going to happen. But if you're a home buyer, and I hate to have anybody tap the brakes, but what that means is, as you go through the summer, don't feel pressure to have to buy like it used to be. If you didn't buy by Saturday afternoon, the house was gone. That's probably not going to happen this year. The exception is, show me a home that's priced really well and in great condition. Those are the ones that are going to go fast and first. Any thoughts on that, Rodney?
No, I'm in agreement. That's like it.
We're good. We're good on that?
Yes.
Okay. Overall, the market is a mixed bag. On one hand, we're seeing more inventory and seller concessions, which offer some breathing room for buyers. On the other, mortgage rates aren't expected to drop significantly anytime soon, even according to our buddy Rodney here, which I'm sure he's correct, anytime soon, which continues to impact affordability. Most major forecasts expect 30-year fixed mortgage rates, currently around 6.8%, to stay above the 6% throughout the year, consistent where they've been so far. So we're not looking for any big changes. Fannie Mae, their prediction is 6.1 by year end, which that would be good. Mortgage MBA would be 6.6 by through 25. National Association of Realtors 6.4, and Wells Fargo 6.9. They're not. That's not nice. If it's a catch-22 for home buyers, Redfin Economics Research wrote in a May statement, mortgage rates are unlikely to fall unless all of the new tariffs are eliminated or if the country falls into a fairly severe recession. I'm going to have to push back on those for me. All the new tariffs are eliminated? That's just not going to. Do you think that's going to happen?
No, I think we'll have some new tariffs.
I think we will too. And I haven't seen any indication, and I'm sure that she's brilliant. I'm certain that she's brilliant. I'm not hearing any ripplings of a recession. Are you?
No, they have quailed.
I mean, I think that they keep talking about the jobs, and we know if there's anything kicking up dust about jobs, we know what that is. Won't get into that. But I don't see any recession. So I don't know what the catch-22 on that is. I'm going to let that one lay. Buyers have more negotiation power than they did a year ago due to more inventory on the market. Fewer bidding wars, almost none. I'm going to jump out and say almost. Have you heard, have any of your other partners had talking about bidding wars very much, Rodney?
Yes, but it was, you got to hear this. I actually was going to ask you about this. We had a person that was looking to buy a house and make an offer on it, and it's the strangest situation. The house was on the market. Let's just say it was on the market for $450, and it goes off the market for I don't know the exact time, say less than a month, and it comes back on the market at $350. So it immediately went to multiple offer situations.
Yeah.
But obviously the 450 was way out of bounds, the original list price. So they dropped it a full $100,000, which I don't see very often, and it created a bidding war. Now, what should it have started at 350 the first time? I don't know. We didn't get the house, but they did offer more than the list price.
I bet they did.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just strange. It's like, man, how do you, there was just a very weird drop. $100,000, was like 20% of the full price, right? Nobody ever drops 20%. Like
Never.
you could see 100,000 on a 2.1 going to 2,
all day.
Yeah, but not, so it was a very strange that created the situation. So I wanted to preface it like I'm not seeing them in a normal situation, but we did see this situation.
Yeah, you can create bidding wars, and there's your answer. That's how to do that, And it must have been without knowing what actually. We'll have to talk about. Give me an address later. We'll look it up. It had to be a hard stop on some sort of procedure, we call it. There had to be a hard deadline, to call it a fire sale.
Yeah, the sellers had moved out. I didn't know the sellers had moved out, and they were, it had already moved, and they was, obviously they was ready to get rid of that property. But it was just a big jump. Even I would have thought the real estate agent would have said, "Hey, let's not drop it a full 100."
I was going to say, you can try 4.
Yeah, but who knows? It may have been needed to be priced at 350. But anyways,
we'd have to look. That's why I'm interested.
It was a strange, not everyday occurrence.
And the difference is that's a fabulous story, actually, because that's a manufactured bidding war. Mm-hmm. But if you're a student of the industry, it cost, depending on where it should have been to begin with, doing that cost the seller money, except it's either time or money. That's the two variables when it comes to real estate. The condition notwithstanding, it's the balance of it is time or money. It probably needed to be priced at 400. That's exactly right. And so they provoked that response, which, they may or may not have gotten close to 400. We'll look that up and if it seems appropriate, we'll share the story. But that being said, what used to be that is because of pricing. That's what provoked that. In not just a few years ago, the bidding wars were availability. Hey, there's a house.
Yes.
17 offers. How come? Because it's there.
Because, yeah, it's the only one there. Yes.
It's available.
Yes.
And you could move in. That's an interesting thing. There's a couple of things I want to go into. That was a great story. Bing, let me go back. I like this. There we go. Buyers have price reductions are more common. In May 2025, 22% of listings had price cuts, a year-over-year increase of about 5 percentage points, according again to Redfin. And I'm going to keep saying it's a good company. Sellers are increasingly willing to offer other incentives too. And we were just I was having a conversation with Jordan, Rodney's assistant, this morning about this. In April, they reported that sellers gave concessions in 44% of home sales, 10 percentage points higher than last summer. These concessions are separate from price reductions and include money toward repair closing costs and or mortgage rate buy downs. Now, I don't know if if this author is up to speed what concessions means now versus what it used to mean. We're going to assume that it doesn't mean compensation. So we'll just kind of leave it on the concession side, which means when a seller contributes concessions, that's, like you said, for closing costs and so forth. Housing inventory is improving in several markets. Improving. That's a slippery word right there. States such as Texas, Florida, Tennessee, and Colorado have more homes for sale than they did before COVID, according to Realtor.com. Those are trust data wise. Those guys are pretty good. So now is still a good time to buy, especially for well prepared buyers. I think that's the most important part, who find a home that fits their long-term needs. That's a well thought out statement, and can negotiate favorable terms. He notes that the risk that, here we go with the tariffs again, new tariffs on building materials could push prices higher again, particularly in new construction. I don't find anything wrong with that statement.
Man, they can blame anything on tariffs. That's a bunch of horse junk. America exports way more than they import, so it's not like tariffs are going to kill this country. It's like we are a huge exporter. We can make anything that we import, besides what is that? Some of those fruits and stuff, but everything else, is. So I'm not a big believer tariffs are going to. Could they change the price momentarily? Absolutely. Until we get different lines of whatever we're importing, get it from different places or do it here. So I don't think tariffs are going to be. I think they're going to help our country a lot more than they're going to have an immediate impact, negative impact.
I think that you're absolutely right on that, and I think it seems to me when I read these articles. And I read these things every day. I always talk about Google Alerts, and it just does a fabulous job of keeping me in the loop on what's going on. That more and more I'm seeing tariffs, the word tariffs, being bandied about like it's the word of the month, Yeah. Whether it means anything is beside the point. I think what you just said, Rodney, is the key to the whole thing, and that is if people are upset, business trade stops or slows down significantly. If people are in turmoil, and talking about punching tariffs back and forth doesn't help us at all on that. So
and honestly, they're just reworking our trade deals that we already have in place that are not good. So it's we can call it tariffs, but really they're just reworking a trade deal with these countries that we've had forever and want to continue to trade with us. I mean, it's It's a bunch of ado about nothing.
Yep. This is a really good comment. Can I riff on this for just a second?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't mean to use that word. I apologize. That's your word, not mine. So I'm going to chat about this. I don't know I'm certain it's going to be way more than that. I'm guessing. But when it comes to listing your house, if you want to have a chance at a bidding war, I am telling you, and talk to whoever it is, your professional out there, if you run your price closer to the actual sale price that it's expected to get, maybe a little bit below and not a bunch, if it's $1 million house, so 990, something like, it doesn't have to be a bunch, but just less than the expected sale price, you will provoke a bidding war, and ultimately you'll get more than you would have if you would have listed higher. That's just the human nature of things. I see people going on, and I was going to talk about this anyway. The real estate groups that I'm in, and I'm in a few. There's a lot of them I've opted out because these guys, some of them are just nuts. They're crazy. But the things that I see a lot these days, way more than I used to get, is, hey, will you guys, it's a Facebook group for realtors, and it says, hey, will you guys help us get some attention to this house? And they'll, provide a link to the house, trying to get us to promote their listing. When, and all of the responses are, hey, it's a beautiful house. Have you adjusted the price? Everybody knows what the problem is, but there's been more homes sitting on the market than for the longest time. And when that happens, then we're talking about right here where it says this summer presents a real opportunity for serious buyers. It's still a shifting market. She cautions that buyers should be prepared and realistic about what they can comfortably afford. That's a beautiful two-sided coin there, that you can buy a house that you like. Just talk to your lender, make sure that you really can afford it. I'm working with some new people here, and I'm telling you, their price range, it's a little bit flexible. When you're going from 350 to 450, they haven't figured out exactly what they're looking for, and that's okay. That's all right. But if you're looking at buying a house, at some point you got to kind of maybe narrow it down even a little more than that. Timing the market, and Angie and I talked about this yesterday. Timing the market is perfectly nearly impossible, and she had said that in a message. But finding the right home at a price and a payment that fits your budget is always the smart move. I couldn't agree more with all of that. And what I'm seeing as things go on throughout the summer is that the same houses that are overpriced, and I'm telling you that I believe that the sellers still have a hot market hangover. I understand that because their neighbors down the street sold last year for $50,000 more than they've got theirs listed, and they're offended by that. But as time goes on and days on market starts to collect, don't be afraid, if you're a buyer, to have your agent ask for concessions. Not so much that it makes them mad, but if you don't ask, you'll never get it. My old, the guy, Terry DeSones, who I have the most respect for, he said, if you don't ask, if you're too stupid to ask, you won't get it, is the way he said it behind the scenes. And what he was talking about is, if you want concessions, all you have to do is ask for it. They can say no. So good old Terry, he always put things in a way that I could understand. I don't want to be stupid.
What is your thought here? When because the news, obviously the news is promoting this. Inventory's going up. Rates are still high. But even Zillow and them said that it could be a 1% decline in values over the market. A 1% decline. So it means a $400,000 house this year would be $396,000 next year.
Correct.
So if somebody's waiting on that, if you're thinking is to wait and hope to get that deal, I mean, you in the article is a 44% of sellers gave concessions.
Correct.
So on a $400,000 house, I bet some of them gave $8,000 or $10,000 concessions.
They
You
could
know,
have
it's very. I mean, you don't ask for 2,500. Normally, you ask for closing cost or 5,000 or something.
something
So right now it looks like, if I had to guess, the concessions are outweighing the 1% of decline.
all day.
And
All
it's
day.
like people are trying to time. If you're trying to time the market on a decline, uh, man, it's just too difficult to do. You just never, ever, ever tried. Like, I'm a huge believer, if you're financially stable and you can afford a house, even if it's declining 1%, to me, you've got data showing you that you're going to come out better just by being able to negotiate some sales concessions, even if you
Today.
do lose 1%.
Yes.
And plus 1% is paper. I mean, it's not real. You're going to buy a house. So what? Your appraisal says a number on it, and you're not even thinking about, you're raising your children there, right? Your family's there. You're not even thinking about selling this. So it's like, it's definitely net worth over the long term, but the first few years, people, in my opinion, you shouldn't be thinking about, I'm buying this house and what is it worth next month? Like, you know, that's not it just moves too slowly for that, if that makes sense. But
That makes
that's
total
just,
sense.
I just want to add that it's like when you're at 1%, either way, gaining or losing on your value, it's too close to call. Like, and especially if 44 people are getting 44% is getting concessions, you're going to get more in concessions than you are if the house went down. Now, I'm betting at the end of the year, if rates tick down just a little bit, the rest of the year picks up a little bit, and we turn into a 1 or 2% gain. There right now is cherry picking the worst times that we've had and saying, projecting a 1% loss, which, is you're just doing that from numbers that could be better at the end of the year. So
And if somebody, that's excellent stuff, Rodney. And if somebody is concerned about 1%, just like you said, so make your offer recover you 2%, and you can feel good about it. I mean, just like you
yeah,
said, you're going to ask concessions for $5,000 or $6,000, $8,000, whatever. And just like Terry said, you can ask. They can say
yeah,
no, but I mean, you might end up in the middle someplace where the 1% just washes away, because that's such a, with all due respect, I know it's somebody else's money, but $4,000 in real estate, it really is nothing. I mean,
yeah.
it, it
It's a
just
drop in the
is.
bucket, especially if it's keeping you from making a decision. From planting your flag and waiting another year, because I think they'll be paying in a year or two a lot more than that 4,000.
Yeah. Well, and keep in mind, at least this is the calculation that goes on in my head, because all of this, when it comes to negotiation and prices, especially in a shifting market like this, remember, we're trying to wean sellers who have, if they bought before COVID, they're kind of bulletproof unless they've HELOC'd themselves into an underwater
Yeah,
situation. But if they've got a ton of equity, they're bulletproof. They can be offended, but they'll be offended with $10,000 less in the bank. They'll still
yeah,
be okay.
yeah,
But when you're doing this kind of stuff, it's really more of an art, excuse me, than a science. Because in terms of days on market, we'll talk to Angie's question here in just a second. As the days on market pile up, the concessions do too. As far as I'm concerned, the price goes down, the concessions go up as the days on market goes up. And
hmm
if they aren't willing to take that as a lesson, it's an object lesson. When the days on the market rise, any house, and I'm going to say that again, any house will sell. I don't care what the condition is, location. The only exception would be if it's been flooded recently and there's no house on the property. But in regular condition, any house will sell at the right price. whatever that price might be. If it needs work, it'll sell at a lower price. If it's move-in ready, it'll sell at a higher price. It's just everything has its price. When the guy said everything's for sale, he's absolutely right. It says here, Ange has a really good question. If I can break off, and then we'll do the next thing. So the average time for offers is at over 30 days now. So when do you think about a price reduction? Here's the rule. Again, this is another Terry DeSalm's thing that I hang my hat on. And he said, if you list a house and nobody comes, no calls, no showings, no nothing, the price is way off. If you list a house and people come to see it, but you get no offers, it's just a little bit off. Now, a little bit and a bunch is suggested, is relative to the purchase price. But if you've gotten people coming to the house and then saying no, you're closer than you think, So I would say in this kind of a market, depending on how fast you want to move it, again, it's going to be either time or money. That's the two variables. Other than the condition, call that a given. Time and money is what makes a difference. So after a week or 10 days, if you've had nothing, you have to reduce the price. It's been a week or 10 days and you've had 5 showings and no offers, you got to lower that price and keep it going. You don't want that to stretch out because it'll get stigmatized where people will go, well, it's been on the market 23 days. What's wrong with it? That's what happens. So that's what you have to do. If there's no motion, you've got to create that motion, just like the bidding war story. They created motion out of thin air. It was really good. You want concessions and then pay more. What?
You could, we used to do that a lot. When
roll it in.
When it was a seller's market or a pretty even market. If we had a buyer that needed some money for closing costs, we could add that on top of the price and
roll it in. Yeah, we did. Those take me back to days gone by. I don't see a lot of that anymore, but we used to build in.
It changes all the time. Yeah.
Well, that's when appraisals could handle it. I don't know about now. Jesus, it's like, I don't know. So, but you know what time it is though, right? You know what time it is?
Let's do it.
Oh yeah.
All
Rodney.
right. We have got another article where a Subway sandwich saved this guy nearly $11,000 closing cost and $100,000 in interest. What about that?
That's good.
But I think he was talking about his Reddit sub, right? Not his actual Subway sandwich.
Yep.
All right, let's jump in. See what I'll read through the article here, and then we can talk about it. Yesterday, I posted wondering if my 7.25% interest rate on a conventional loan was a bit high with 800 credit, no debt, high income. The 720 was after paying $5,300 for extra points. Okay, so they was paying $5,300 in points to get the 7.25% interest rate. Tons of people said it was cap, as the kids say. So I spent up till 2 a.m. researching how to shop lenders, as I've never done that before. At 9 a.m. on the dot, I made 6 to 7 phone calls to different lenders. Now, I like that he put in what he was telling. Hi, I'm OP, and we're under contract on a $550 purchase contract price with 5% down. Currently shopping for mortgages and with an 800 plus credit, hoping to get a verbal non-committal quote on interest and closing cost involved. He goes on to say nearly all came with 6.75 to 7% rates, which he was at 7.25% before he started shopping. So I narrowed it down and go further estimates on closing costs. One was waiving underwriting fees and a bunch of other things, and I was able to use it to negotiate, and one lender fought hard for my business and matched it. Plus was the most responsive and quick to answer everything, and said she would order appraisal ASAP so we could close in 10 to 14 days. All right. So I went hoping to just get the 7%, and I left with a 6.75 rate and massive cuts to closing costs. After comparing new lenders' estimates to my main lenders, I also noted massive amount of extra fees and charges on their closing costs. Things that I thought were normal until I got other estimates. In addition to that, every typical charge was $1,000, $1,200 or more. In total, we saved $11,000 closing costs alone. Over the cost of 30-year mortgage, we saved nearly $100,000 in interest. He does go on to say that, yeah, this is only if we never refinance and took the full 30 years to pay. So, but still, that's a lot of savings there. I thought, okay, so I want to jump in here to just to say, I thought he did a good job with the shopping. And the best thing I think he did with shopping, first, I'll say this: you should always shop. Like, we sell money, okay? And my job is to get you the best deal on the market, okay? And there's times that my company may not have the best deal. And I say, hey, this company's got something really good going on. You need to go with them. But there's a few things you can do to ensure that you start out by getting the best deal, and that is shopping. And I really liked what he did here. One, he asked for a verbal non-committal quote for the interest rate and closing cost involved, meaning you don't have to go out and give everybody a full application to get your quote from them. You can do this by giving them the information that they need, and it's a non-committal quote. Like, I want to do this with every single person I talk to up front. I want to go over the rates and fees first, so we don't have any misunderstanding of what they are. I want them to know they're getting a great deal. So for a cut, but I'm also conservative, and if I was shopping, I wouldn't want to give out my personal information, my social security, my all that stuff. Fill out 7 applications just to get these quotes. You can get a quote based on what you say. It's a verbal quote based on what you're telling the lender. Okay, so that's number one. And the second thing I liked about, he said that he has a property, and when you have a property, that means you can lock your interest rate. Okay, otherwise people can tell you anything. A lender can say, "Oh, my rate's 4% today," but if you don't have a property to lock it into, there you have nothing. You can't lock it. There's no commitment to it or anything. So by telling these people that they have a property, they have to be honest with their quote, or they're going to get called back in an hour and say, "We want your quote," and they ain't going to be able to do it. So that's probably not going to happen. So by telling them having a property and by giving them the personal information without filling out an application is really, really good. I really liked how he did that. Now, the massive amount of extra fees charged in closing costs, I don't see that a lot. Like, I'm almost thinking that, the way some lenders can put together an estimate, they'll put together an estimate and say, you want to pay your own escrow account. So that's going to save out probably $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 just in, taxes and insurance from going in as closing costs. But you're going to be responsible for those in just a few months, and actually you'll be responsible for your insurance immediately. So there's several ways you can mess with an estimate to make it look a lot better. But what I'll say there is, whenever you compare your rates and fees, okay, a lot of the fees are going to be the same, because if you close with the same title company, you're going to have the same, costs from the state. You're going to have the same escrow account. You're going to have the same insurance. You're going to have the same closing attorney. So really the only difference is the lender fees and the rate. And that's where I help my people look at, say, hey, in this section right here, these are all our fees, and this is our rate associated with it. So that way they don't have to concern themselves with, well, why did this guy have, my insurance was double at theirs, or mine was, double theirs, something like that. So anyways, that is the real estate reality check on how to shop. I really think he did a really good job on what they did to go shopping. And let's jump into the comments here. Hooray, nicely done. You put in the legwork and paid Hampshire $11,000 for less than a day's work. Let's see. We really should have a pinned post about shopping for mortgages on here. Before today, I thought shop meant having to be an ass and negotiate like 0.01 changes. I guess my situation was different because I was given such a bad deal from the main lender. The first thing is you got to ask. Like, even in that article you read a minute ago, Andy, if you notice that they said the savvy borrowers who negotiate a better deal. I mean, and it's not like we have everything is negotiable on our end. We have a rate we're supposed to give out and things like that, but we can always go back and say, hey, somebody else is, and try to match a rate or whatever. So there are things like that. So
can I ask you a question? Can I just ask a real quick question on that? It seems to me what I was impressed with, and again, I'm going to go off on Reddit, how I really have fallen in love with, it's a little bit strong, but I mean, I really like Reddit and what happens in there. And I'm asking, this person seemed really prepared. And as they were calling lenders, because you're the guy that gets these calls, when you have somebody that's educated asking savvy questions, I bet you that gets your attention, doesn't it?
Oh, I love anything up front. Like, I love being up front, and I love customers being up front with me. And that is, yes. When somebody calls and they're straight to the point, absolutely. It's always, I get all kinds of calls. So yeah, I mean, it's like some people are like, hey, Rodney, I hadn't done this in 20 years. Man, what do I do? And then you get a call like this, somebody that's savvy and is shopping and needs, is just, this is how they're starting their thing, and they should start it like this.
I mean, Mike, what I was getting at was, though, you've got this type of person who I consider to be really well prepared versus somebody who calls up and goes, hey, what's your rate? Click.
Yes. Yeah. And you qualify. Yeah. I mean, somebody asks you what's your rate. It's like, okay, what's your credit score? What's your down payment? And you go through all the factors that determine that. But yes, yeah. Anytime, just like your point, shopping for lenders, you don't get it unless you ask. That, I mean, it's shopping for anything else, but jumping back in here, some of these other comments. How did you choose lenders to call? Locals or just Googling? I've never shopped lenders either. I would call your local banks. I'd call if it was me, I'd call some of the banks around me. I'd call, I'd call everybody that reputable that I've heard their name. 2 or 3 should be fine. I have a noob question. When you shop lenders, does that impact your credit score at all? Boom. That's a good question. No, it doesn't. Even if you were the type of person who wanted somebody to pull the application and say you had 3 or 4 applications out there, as long as you did them in a short period of time, 30 to 60 days, you're allowed to shop for mortgages and people can pull your credit to do that. I'm more conservative, or however you want to private. There's no need for them to have that information if you're not going with them. That's what I like. I don't mind. Like, I'll give the lender everything on me that I have to and need to, but I don't want to give it to somebody that I'm not going to do business with. So I'm going to find out if I'm going to do business with them before I apply. So that's what you need to do, in my opinion, is shop lenders without giving them your information.
I might add one thought on when it comes to lenders too. If you're really if you're lost in the weeds trying to figure out lenders, my go-to is find somebody, a friend that has had a good experience with a lender and get a referral from them, because chances are pretty good you'll be treated the same way.
Yeah, real estate agents typically have a lender they work with, and it's they want to, like, for me, I want to do a good job for my real estate partners and the customer. It's not, I know there's kind of more, one, it's confidentiality and all that stuff, but I still want to make sure I get them to closing table on time and they have a great service, they love me and all that, because they're being referred to you by somebody, and you need to, for people who do it for a living, they work really hard to maintain that referral partnership as well. The one here said, "Stay vigilant, though. My lender silently tucked in a brand new fee in the final disclosure." That's hard to do these days. And the reason why is that when mortgage lenders disclose a loan, and we disclose our fees, they can't change. There's some of them that has a tolerance, like if it's a state fee, or it's a title fee or insurance, something that the lender does not control. The buyer has the ability to shop for it, and it can change in only small tolerances. The majority, like our fees, can't change. Like I can't say, if I forgot to add my underwriting fee or processing fee in there, I couldn't just say, "Oh, sorry, I missed it on disclosures. I'm going to slip it in now." Because we have to provide, when we sell the loan, we have to provide the initial disclosures along with the final disclosures, and they have to be compliant. Like they have to, it actually says, if you notice when you go to closings on the closings, the closing disclosure, it tells you the difference it changed from projection from your start to when you closed. So you can't have any tolerance. Our system won't let it go through. It's called a tolerance cure. We have to cure it or pay for it. That's what I mean by cure it. So, but that's all the comments I had on there. It's a great article on, getting some tips on how to shop. I think they did a really good job with that one.
Good job, Rodney. I'm dancing back here. That's good stuff. Nope, I thought that was, it gets better every week. You are so good at that stuff, man. I really appreciate it. And if anybody's out there that's looking for a lender, I'm telling you, call Rodney. I don't know what states you can take advantage of, Rodney, but I'm telling you, I've worked with this, just there's an unabashed recommendation. I've worked with Rodney since I think 2012, and that ain't changing, and it's because him and his team have always taken care of my clients. So if you're looking for a mortgage and it's workable between states, however that works, call Rodney. His number is going to be, as always, in the description box.
Yeah,
Good
not
job,
only
bud.
that. Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk through your current estimate and make sure you're getting a good deal, we can do that as well. I mean, it's not just, call me for a mortgage. If you got a question, and I pretty much do all states. I don't think I do Hawaii and a couple states, but other than that, I pretty much do all states.
Yeah, First Bank is pretty big, isn't it?
Yes, we just bought another bank, and that put us, I think, in the, goodness, I want to say well into the top 100 of size banks total. I mean, we're over 20 billion now.
That's it?
Yeah,
Just 20 billion?
Just 20 billion. Yeah.
What are you guys doing? Sleeping in the mornings? What's going on?
I don't know what they do with all that money. I guess they just stack it up and sleep on it. I don't know what they do with it.
They invested in amphitheaters here, right?
Amphitheater. Yeah, they've man. Yeah, it's a huge bank.
I guess so. Well, since we're on this topic, I was going to skip one, Rodney. instead of the article number 2, article number 3. Because we're talking about buyers and deals and buyers market and all the rest of it, I thought this caught my interest, and it was an article directed towards, yeah, Rodney, don't be that's good. Slacker.
Yeah, she called me a skacker. What is that? Is that a southern slacker?
That's a western slacker. That's the worst. But this article, and we'll just keep it a couple of minutes because we're almost out of time already, which is fantastic, is did you buy during the COVID housing boom? And here's what you could be facing. Because that, in my opinion, the only people that are even slightly at risk is anybody that started buying in 2020 plus over the last few years. I'd have to go back and look at the actual charts as to when prices started to go nuts, but call it 2020 and a half, for anybody that was in that. So here's basically what it says, and this will be kind of laughed. Here we go. I love talking to her. She tried to fix it. Oops. But here's the deal. During COVID, the real estate market boomed as record low interest rates and lifestyle shifts created intense competition that helped drive housing prices to record highs. Remember, we're talking about manufactured bidding wars? There it is, in spades. Now, however, home values are falling in some areas. That's generally speaking. Some are worse than others, which could put some buyers underwater. I haven't heard that term, and we've talked about this a number of times, since 2010, 2008, in that range. When we were taking listings with Terry, there was a period of time that most homes we'd go to and we'd have to tell them how much it was going to cost them to sell their house. That's underwater. I mean, yeah. That's underwater. And we got so good at it, we'd do comps, and the way he'd do it is he'd lay out the pictures and he goes, how do you think this house compares? How do you think your house compares to that one? Well, theirs is a little nicer. That's right. So when you come to the table, when you sell it, we'll probably need $30,000 from you. Anyway, falling home prices aren't rare. Markets often have ups and downs, but if recent changes put you underwater, again, this is going to be rare, but of the people that are at risk, the more common is going to be in this later bunch. That can be concerning and limit financial flexibility. Fortunately, there are ways to get above the surface. And all it really boils down to is this. Being underwater on a mortgage means the loan amount is higher than the home's current market value. I think there's a rule of thumb, like 10 or 20% like that. So if you sold it, you couldn't fully pay off the mortgage with the proceeds. Being underwater can happen when buyers pay high prices. That's sort of a given. That can happen if there's overbidding or as some experience during COVID. So common. God, I mean, wow. And if the market softens like it is right now, the homeowners might see their home value. I think what they meant to say in this particular article, sorry, I'm doing this wrong, that homeowners might see their home value. It says increase, but I think they meant decrease and owe more than the mortgage amount. Putting down a low down payment also increases the risk. During the time when things were so hot, people were having to adjust how much money they could put down because they were going over ask by such a large amount, and so they were putting all their eggs in that basket. And there was a lot of people going, hey, be careful, because what the question you get is what happens if the market goes down? Here's your answer. It's right here.
Keep in mind, Andy, that people were voluntarily paying way over appraised value for houses. Okay, so they were starting out, quote, underquote, whatever you want to do, underwater. They were paying more than the thing was worth, and they knew that. Like, they were doing it because it was limited. So they jumped out of the gate with, extra equity into the house that they'll never, it may take them years and years to get back. But, like I said, if that's where they wanted to live and they only had, they had to compete against 40 other people, that's what they were doing to, you know.
It got so commonplace of these overbids that the Tennessee, I don't know if it was actually generated, but ultimately it ended up with the Tennessee Association of Realtors generated a new document that said, we're buying this house and we'll cover the appraisal gap.
Yes.
I mean, the first time I looked at it, I was like, no
Yeah.
shit, really?
The
Sorry, but
appraisal gap meaning what it's somebody appraised at and what you're buying it for.
yeah,
Yeah.
if a house was, because the way it was happening, I'm going to say it was a $750,000 house, but somebody's going to buy it for $9,000. When it got its appraisal, it was for $8,000. So we had to have, you want to cover the difference, because otherwise the seller would go next. You're not getting a house without the appraisal gap disclaimer, disclosure, whatever. The seller would just say next. Those were the hardest words everybody's getting passed up on anyway. Nuts. That's wow. We've been through it. Anyway, just to finish up, here we go. Is it common to be underwater on your mortgage? In several major markets, housing prices peaked around 2022, 23, and have dipped over 10% since. I haven't seen any dips of 10% here. Now in Austin, a lot of Florida cities, maybe some, but 10% seems a little bit high. But anyway, that said, some housing markets continue to climb. We're all climbing, even though it's slow, reducing the odds of homeowners there going underwater. For example, some Sunbelt cities, such as Austin, boomed. Man, they went nuts during the pandemic, but have been cooling lately. In May of 2022, median Austin sale prices peaked at 667 and have since fallen to 562. So that's $100,000. There's your $100,000 right there. A drop over 15%. New Orleans prices are down 10%. So that's local now. Remember, real estate's local. So when we talk about these 10% grand numbers, that's not nationwide.
Yeah.
So
Manhattan's not 10% down.
No, Manhattan's doing good. We're not 10%.
You could pick out several of these. You probably pick out 100 California cities that are not down either.
Yeah, well, but the advice, and we'll finish up on this, which I thought was common sense, but there was one thought in there, and it says what you can do if you're underwater currently. Like a lot of people survive that. I know a lot of people that bought before the crash and kept their house till afterwards and still came out okay. They just were in their house for maybe longer than they wanted to be. But what can you do if you're underwater? Keep up your mortgage payments, add value. Be careful with that, because the ROI may not be there for doggy doors. Kind of be careful on what you do for upgrades. Rent your home. They're saying let that equity keep building up and just rent it out. I think that's a decent idea if you're able to do that. But what they're basically saying is the bottom line is, although going underwater on a mortgage can be scary or frustrating if you bought during the COVID peak, that doesn't mean you'll suffer a permanent loss. History suggests, and I think both of us could agree with this because we got the evidence, history suggests that asset prices rise over time. So if you can ride it out, your home's value may go up in the future. And if you keep making mortgage payments, you can build up positive equity. Instead of panicking, know your options and consider how you can make rational, proactive choices. I thought that was excellent advice because the entire city of Nashville was in trouble during the crash. All of them, and for those people that jumped and got panicky, they lost money. And like the story I just told you, for the people that kept their wits about them and hung on to the house in 2013, 14, 15 actually started to make it.
Yeah.
So.
I just don't think there's a lot of people underwater with their mortgages, and because we had all the paying over, but that was mostly affluent buyers, or however, well-equipped buyers that was paying that cash, because we can't finance that. You still have to meet the finance law, the basic minimums of the mortgage. Like, so the ones that are going under may be the ones that did a THDA loan, 100% loan,
Yeah, yeah.
stuff
There's
like
no
that,
space.
because the paying over was usually with cash. Now, you may be upside down on the value of your house, but you probably didn't owe more on your mortgage than the value of the house, for all the people who overpaid. But for the people who bought during the time and it hasn't gone up and they bought with a 100% loan, they could be facing, a little bit of a shortage there. But and the suggestion or the idea goes the same way, that the thing about it is you just can't move right then. You can't sell. When you go buy a house with 100% mortgage anyways, you need a few years to cover the cost of it, of equity, to cover the cost it's going to take to sell it, because it don't sell itself, right? So you're going to it's there's too much equity, and there's too few of 100% loans being done to where mortgage people being underwater on their mortgage is a real concern for Americans right now,
Yeah, yeah.
in my
And
opinion. Yeah.
and I think that the article does a pretty good job of saying it's rare. It's a rare deal. What part of what caught my attention on this was, did you buy during the COVID housing boom? This what you could be facing was, however you bought a house, you tend to think you're going to repeat that when you sell it. That's a hot market. You can price high and that kind of stuff. What was interesting to me about, and the point I'm trying to make, we're in a buyer's market now. And that means more often than not, the seller is going to be the one capitulating on the price, either in concessions or something, um,
Right.
to the buyer instead of the other way around. Because you came into the market where the buyer was giving up everything, including appraisals. I mean,
Yes.
I was so
Yeah.
uncomfortable writing that. I remember there was one house, be non-specific, and well, I think I'll keep that. But if you did buy during COVID, just kind of know it's a different market now. And, if your house doesn't sell right away, there's an object lesson in there. It's not that it isn't a good house. It's just that buyers are kind of, they're the ones that's pulling the train these days. As long as you have water, I'm camping on my property. I like this chick. I really do. Buddy, that was great. What a great riff. That's the best one so far. Hey, have any final thoughts there, Rodney?
I'm good. I'm
You're
good.
good. Ange, thanks so much for being our buddy and participating with us all the time. We just love you for that. Look forward to meeting you soon someday. So, where'd it go? Lost my button. I know it's here someplace. It's oh, there it is. See you next Tuesday.